Okay, now I actually want to talk about this topic for quite a while now, and it's been buzzing in my head for a while ever since the last episode of Fear the Walking Dead, aka Morgan's last episode on Fear. And today's video, I'm going to be discussing who will meet Rick first, like who will find Rick first, Daryl or Morgan. So stay tuned. And now before we actually get into the video, I'd like to ask you all to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you guys so much for the growth. Thank you guys so much for the support. I really appreciate it. And, we have a new goal of 5,000 subscribers. So if you guys want to be part of this new journey to 5,000 subscribers, please subscribe and enjoy the video. Thank you. And now first let's discuss about Daryl and will he find Rick first? I mean, of course we know that Michonne is going to be finding Rick first, of course, like the Walking Dead, the ones who live, is the Walking Dead Rick and Michonne, but I'm talking about a character other than Michonne, and it's really likely that it's either Daryl or Morgan. And Daryl's situation is a bit difficult to say because he's having his own spin-off, right? He's in France, and by the looks of it, that this show, like the Daryl Dixon show, is going to be multiple seasons. So we don't know how long will this spin-off will take, right? In the Walking Dead universe, how long will its span? Will it be a couple of months, right? Or will it be a couple of years that he's in France? Who knows, right? But with Daryl having a spin-off of his own and having his own adventure, I mean, his intention is to look for Rick, right? That has been his intention the whole time, right? At the end of season 11, he went out looking for Rick, right? And it makes sense for Daryl to find Rick first. But with him having his own spin-off, with him having multiple seasons of his spin-off, and also Carol being in the Daryl Dixon spin-off, it does seem very likely that this spin-off will take a while until it ends, and also Daryl will be in France for a while. But let's just say that the Daryl Dixon spin-off only has 2 seasons, right? And it actually ends off with him going back to America, him and Carol going back to America. And the only way I could see Daryl meeting Rick in the Daryl Dixon spinoff, or if they have another season of The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, it's kind of likely that the CRM will take Carol and Daryl. And in my opinion, that makes perfect sense, right? Because Daryl's whole mission at the end of the day is to look for Rick. And the CRM, of course, having Rick and the CRM being the big bads of this universe, it totally makes sense that they would want to make the CRM more hands-on with the other characters, right? They want to connect everything together. So I think that it would be perfect if Daryl and Carol are taken by the CRM and they eventually find Rick. I'm not sure what type of circumstances will it be. Will they make it to the Commonwealth first, like Daryl and Carol, when they come back to America, and then they continue their mission to look for Rick, and then they get taken by the CRM, like how of course Rick got taken by the CRM? It's totally possible. Or the CRM brings them over to America from France themselves, and then they just put them in that base where Rick is held at. And of course, the timeline is so messy at this point, right? Because The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, the Rick and Michonne spinoff, it is possible that that is set in the past, either during the events of season 11 or probably within that 1-year time jump that they had at the end of season 11. Or it takes place in present time. And if it's taken place in present time, and then Daryl's in France, right? He can't find Rick because Michonne already found Rick, and they probably already made their way to Alexandria by the time he comes back. But it's totally possible that Rick and Michonne could be stuck at the CRM in the end of The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, and they eventually lose, right? They can't escape the CRM, and that's where they need everybody else, right? They could do this whole big crossover, Daryl could be the one leading the charge against the CRM to save Rick and Michonne. And now when it comes to Morgan, I think it's more possible for Morgan to find Rick first, then Daryl, and that's solely because he's still in America, right? And his final episode in Fear is him looking for Rick, right? He, at the end of that episode, he went out looking for Rick, right? And he's gonna try everything to look for Rick. and of course he doesn't have a spin-off announced. And if Morgan does even have a spin-off announced, right, if he has a spin-off, then it could just be revolved around him looking for Rick, right, him meeting the other characters, him meeting Ezekiel again, him reuniting with everybody else, and then he finds out that Rick was taken by the CRM, and then because Morgan knows more about the CRM than the other characters in the Walking Dead main cast, right, like for example, like Daryl, Carol, everyone else, none of those characters know about the CRM, and Morgan is the only one that would know about the CRM, so he would find a way to look for Rick. It'd be easier for him to track Rick down and eventually find a CRM base. And now, it's totally possible that we may not even see Morgan again, right? Because his last episode on Fear was very open-ended, right? It looked like that Lenny James would like to come back as Morgan, right? But, it does seem like that he wants a break, right? He doesn't want to play the character of Morgan. It's totally possible that he could come back, right? And, I think the only way that he would agree to it is that if he were to work with Andrew Lincoln again. And it's totally possible that, The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, has a season 2, and Morgan may be that character that comes in season 2, like how Carol is in the Daryl Dixon spinoff in season 2. They could bring Morgan in The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live season 2, and I think that's perfect, right? Because Morgan has such a big connection to Rick, right? He was the first one that saved Rick in the start of the apocalypse, right? He helped him out and stuff like that, and he worked with Rick so many times, and they just have like this close bond. And also Morgan is kind of like Rick Grimes in Fear, so it totally makes sense, right? And also his story ended off with him looking for Rick. So again, Morgan could definitely be that character to save Rick and Michonne from the CRM, and that's because he already knows quite a bit about the CRM, right? He's interacted with them, he's actually killed a lot of CRM soldiers, so I could totally see that happening, to be honest. But I just wanted to point something out real quick, that before Morgan's last episode on Fear, I thought that Morgan was going to be taken by the CRM at the end of Fear, like how, the CRM took Rick, right? Because it would be very fitting, right? Two big leaders of their groups being taken by the CRM, and, just there's nobody knowing where they went, right? And the Fear group, of course, does know more about the CRM than, the main group. But, I think it would have been really fitting if Morgan was taken by the CRM. And, that could totally happen again, right? Because again, Morgan could get damaged in battle, or he could go unconscious, or he could go back into his clear phase at one point, and then the CRM takes him to their base, right? And there is where Morgan could potentially find Rick, right? And how Rick went back to his red machete phase in the CRM in The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. Michonne went back to her phase of when she killed the governor, right, around the governor seasons. It'd be very cool to see Morgan going back to his clear phase, and you just have Morgan and Rick back in their prime stages against the CRM. I think that would just be really cool to see. But yeah, between Morgan and Daryl, I personally think that Morgan is going to find Rick first. And again, the whole timeline thing is very confusing, right? It's kind of a mess at this point. But by the looks of it, by the looks of the spin-offs, and which characters have their spin-offs, which characters don't have a spin-off, I could totally see Morgan meeting Rick first, and I could totally see Morgan showing up in season 2 of The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. I mean, if it has a second season, which I do think it would have a second season. I mean, Dead City is getting its season 2, the Daryl Dixon spinoff is getting its season 2, and Rick and Michonne should get their season 2 as well, and they should put Morgan in there, in my opinion, and I think that would be perfect. And again, yeah, Morgan is probably the first character that's going to find Rick other than Michonne. And now that's it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed this little theory I had, right? This has been in my head for quite a bit, right? And I wanted to make a video on it. But yeah, other than that, I would like to ask you all to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you guys so much for the growth. And let's get to that new goal of 5,000 subscribers. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching.